Okay, thank you very much for coming to watch this video. This is lecture 13 of the series of the amazing power of Gematria, in which I use Hebrew and English, and I will also introduce other languages as we go along. Today's subject is going to be on the story of Esther. I'm doing this about 2.5 weeks before the Jewish festival of Purim, and that festival commemorates the victory of the Jewish people in Persia during the Bible times, between the period when the first temple had been destroyed and the second temple was not yet built. And that period of time was 70 years, which the prophet Jeremiah prophesies that they will be in in Babylon, and they will return after 70 years. And during that period of time, the story of Esther takes place. It is towards the end of that 70-year period, I think about 17 years or something like that, I can't remember exactly. And you can read the story of Esther in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, called the Old Testament by Christians. And in the Hebrew Bible, you'll find it in the third section. The Bible is divided into 3 parts: the Torah, which is the 5 books of Moses, and that's followed by the book of the prophets, which starts with the book of Joshua, the book of Judges, the book of Samuel, Kings, and then it goes with individual prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, etc. And, excuse me, I still got a cough. And then the third section of the Bible is called the writings, Ketuvim in Hebrew, and the writings comprise of the books like the book of Job, the book of Psalms, the book of Proverbs, the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Daniel, and in the Hebrew Bible you will have the book of the Chronicles at the end, and you also have the book of Esther. And the book of Esther is a very interesting story. There is no mention of the name of God in the book of Esther, yet it's considered to be holy, and perhaps we'll see a little bit why that is the case in this particular lecture. I'm going to just give you a few snippets of the story and the book I wrote, which is called the Secret Behind the Mask, Purim Secrets Behind the Mask. Why I call it Behind the Mask, because one of the customs in Purim is for Jews to dress up in fancy dress, but it's more significant than just the fact of having a bit of fun, is because the fact that God's name is not mentioned in the book of Esther, but is walking behind the scenes as if not being able to see that he is there. There's not producing what we call miracles, which are overt and clearly visible to the eye, like the splitting of the sea. But one can see that there's, going through the story of Esther, certain coincidences that if one was not there, then the others couldn't follow, and there's a sequence of events that lead up to the victory of the Jewish people over their enemy, who was a man called Haman and his merry men. They were the adversaries of the Jewish people, and his plot to destroy the Jewish people, the genocide of the Jewish people, which would have been all the Jewish people at that time, because all the Jews were in Persia. And it was an enormous empire, which the very beginning of the book of Esther says it stretched from India to Ethiopia, and it had 127 provinces. So I can't go through the whole story of Esther. It's 10 chapters in the Bible. Please do read that book. It's very interesting, and there's a bit of fun in it to see how it all works out, and you see the plots that go on. So, but I'll do some snippets and the main ideas of the story. The story starts with Ahasuerus, Ahasuerus in English, which is believed to be Xerxes, one of the kings of Persia, and he makes a big feast for all the people in Shushan, the capital, and he invites people from all the provinces to come, all the main important princes of the provinces to come. And he makes it for 180 days, and after that period of 180 days, he makes a shorter feast for 7 days for all the people in Shushan, all the commoners and everything that come along, and that included the Jewish people as well, and they came along. And the rabbis do say, well, they shouldn't have gone. The question of whether the food was kosher or not, things like that. So, but they went, and that, they say, led to almost their downfall. And at that feast, the king wants to, at the second feast, the 7-day feast, it would seem that he married Vashti towards the end of, or maybe at the very end of the 180-day feast, because this 7-day feast is like what we would call Shiva Brachot in Judaism, the 7 days which you celebrate after the feast. And but whatever the case is, he asked Vashti to come to his feast, which was the feast for the men, and she was the feast of the women, and she refused to come. And that led to one of his advisors to advise him to get rid of her, put her to death because she's causing problems. The woman has to listen to her husband, and he made laws that the women should speak the language of the husband, not the other way, because there's 127 provinces, all different languages. So this advisor wanted Vashti to be killed, sentenced to death, and then certain laws of the patriarchal ways of life that spread out through the Western Hemisphere. No, not the Western Hemisphere. Yeah, maybe. Well, in Northern Hemisphere and amongst the Westerners. So, so we have that the beginning of the story where Vashti is put to death and the king needs a new wife, and he again gets advice by one of his advisors to make a nice beauty party and find a new woman, and ends up that a Jewish woman is chosen, and her name is Esther, is chosen to become the queen. And her uncle, and there's a question whether she's actually married to her uncle, because she was an orphan and she went to live with her uncle, and some say she actually married, but she was actually his niece. And her uncle is Mordechai, who's the leading light of his generation, and he encourages her to go along to the feast, obviously having to give her a divorce. And she gets picked up by the gang, the beauty parlour gang, and she gets taken to the palace, and she becomes the queen. And then we find certain events that take place where Haman, a man called Haman, becomes the prime minister, the second in command, and he doesn't like the Jews. Particularly, he goes out into the courtyard, and the only person that doesn't bow down to him is Mordechai. Mordechai refuses, and he wants to not just kill Mordechai, he wants to kill all Mordechai's people. So he goes to the king, and the king gives him permission to. He doesn't even name who the people are. He just calls them the people that don't keep your laws, and he gets permission to destroy them. And of course, Esther gets to hear this from Mordechai. Mordechai finds out about the plot, and he tells Esther. Now the plot is this, that Haman decides on a date. Instead of going to his diary and looking up, well, what day should it be? Can't be on that day because I've got a meeting with the king. I can't be on that day because I've got to meet my advisors, blah, blah, blah. He just draws lots. He takes a hat and whatever, and he puts the months of the year in one, and he puts the days of the month in another, and he picks one lot, and he picks another lot. And that's what the first became, because in the story of the very last chapter, no, not quite the last chapter, 9th chapter, so it states that the festival of Purim is called Purim after the pour of the lots which Haman took to decide on the day to kill the Jews. And the date that came out to kill the Jews was on the 13th of Adar, which is a few weeks, 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks. And that day is today a fast day for the Jewish people. They fast on the day, and the next day they celebrate, because what happened was this, is that Mordechai tells Esther, I can't let this happen, he's going to try and destroy the Jews, you've got to go to the king and try and save the Jewish people. So she goes off. She doesn't want to go at first, and he has to tell her that if you don't go, then help will come to the Jews from another place. And perhaps this is the whole reason why you became queen. So she says to Mordechai, well, okay, I'll go, tell everybody in Shushan to fast for 3 days, and I'll do the same, and I'll go to king, and because it's very dangerous, I haven't been asked to see the king for 30 days, and if you go to the inner court without permission, if he doesn't lift up his scepter, it's a sign that what's it, Ochavei, that's it, you're gone. But if he lifts up his scepter, then you will live. So it was a risk for her, and she said, if I perish, I will perish. And she goes to Ahasuerus, Ahasuerus, in the court, and he does lift up his scepter, and he says to her, what can I do for you? Up to the half of the kingdom I will give to you. And she says, would you and Haman come to a feast which I have made for you this afternoon? So Ahasuerus goes with Haman to the feast, and at the feast he says, what can I do for you? Obviously he knows that she risked her life to come to him, so there must be an important reason why she came. So he says to her, what can I do for you? Up to half of the kingdom I will give to you. And she says, well, could you and Haman come to a feast tomorrow? All right, another feast. And then I will tell you exactly what I want. So a bit of intrigue here. So that night the king couldn't sleep, and he asked one of his advisors to come along and read the book of Chronicles to him. So he happens to open up at a certain date, and that date happens to be the day on which Mordecai reveals a plot by two guys called Bigtan and Teresh, who were plotted to try and kill the king, and he tells the king about this. I think he might be told Esther first, and Esther told the king, and the plot got out, and the two guys were put to death. And he says to his servant, did Mordecai get rewarded for that instant? And he says no. While means Haman has gone home, and Haman says to his, and he's going, first of all he's going through the gate of the court, and he sees Mordecai there, and Mordecai wouldn't move, he wouldn't bow down to him, and he was really angry, and he goes home and he tells his advisors, and he tells Zeresh, his wife, and his sons, he's got 10 sons, and he tells them, I've been invited to the party of the queen, I made big honours and everything, but all that means nothing to me while Mordecai the Jew is still alive. And his advisors, Zeresh tells him, well, make a big gallows for him, and put it in your garden, 50 amas high, you'll be able to see it from the palace tomorrow afternoon when you have the feast, and you can see Mordecai hanging there. And go to the king tomorrow morning and ask permission to hang him. So that's exactly what he does. He gets up in the morning and he goes to the king. Of course, the king has just that night had heard about Mordecai and hadn't been rewarded for saving his life. And Haman goes to the king, and the king asks him what he wants, and he says, no, he doesn't ask him what he wants. He says to Haman, he says, what shall be done to the man whom the king desires to honour? So before even Haman has got a chance to open his mouth to ask for the for permission to kill Mordecai, he's asked how should he reward a person that the king desires to honour. So Haman thinks, oh, that must be me. And he says, oh, let this man be put into the king's garments, let him ride on the king's horse, let the king's crown be put on his head. And Ahasuerus says to him, good idea, you go and do that to Mordecai right now. And so he has to go. He says, he doesn't tell him to put the crown on. He says, go and take the garments, clothe him, take the horse, but he doesn't tell him to take the crown. That was what we call a chutzpah, a cheek, to tell the king to use his crown. So, and there Haman goes off and has to do that, and he goes back home. And by the time he gets home, the guys are there ready to drag him off to the second feast. At the second feast, Esther reveals to the king the plot to destroy her people, and the king says, who is that wants to destroy your people? And she says, Haman, the wicked one. So, and then he gets hung up on the gallows which he'd prepared for Mordecai. And then they need to get permission. Mordecai and Esther go to the king to get permission to do something about the attack that is going to come in all the provinces of all the 127 provinces. They're going to destroy the Jewish people. And Ahasuerus says, look, you're famous now. You've been honoured. Here's the seal of the king. Write letters. I can't retract what has gone out, but you can defend yourselves. So they send out letters, and the Jewish people defend themselves, and they win on the 13th the battle. And then Esther goes to the king and says, look, there's still more enemies in Shushan. Please give us permission for one more day. He says, Gam Macha, also tomorrow, which we'll see in Gematria in a minute, the significance of that. Also tomorrow, please let us continue the fight. And they had one more day, which was the 14th of Adar. And then the very next year, the Jewish people celebrated. They celebrated the festival of Purim on the 14th of Adar, the day after the 13th, because they were fighting on that day. So the next day they celebrated. And they made that a festival. And those in what we call a walled city would keep it on the 15th, because Shushan was fighting on the 14th, and it was a walled city. So the rabbis made a law that all walled cities from the time of Joshua would celebrate it on the 15th. Okay, so that's the basic story. There are more details, obviously, if you read the story. And I'm just going to show you a few things. First of all, let's get down to some Gematria. Okay, the word Purim, we said, means lots. That's the meaning. Pur is lot. So, now, if you take the Hebrew word for Purim, which is Purim, and we're going to use two forms of Gematria. We're going to use the placement value, where this is the 13th letter, 10th, 20, 16, and 17th. If we get that together, we get 66. That's the PV, placement value. If we take the word lots, which is what it means, that's the 12th letter, that's the 15th letter, the 20th letter, and the 19th letter. Again, if we add it together, we'll get 66, placement value. So we see that the meaning of the word Purim, lots, have the same Gematria in the placement value. If we use the alternate placement value, where the final mem is the 24th, we put them at the end of the alphabet, and the final mem becomes the 24th letter. If you remember, when I was in the early lectures, I was showing you the different sort of systems. And in Hebrew, you've got what we call alternate values. Here we are. So this was the sheet I had, and where you got Aleph, the first letter, to Tet is 22, and the final letters can take two values. They can take the normal value, so the final sadi will be the same as 18 as the normal sadi, or the final sadi, when you stick them at the end, will be 27. So this now becomes 24. So I now have Purim as to being 24 plus 10. These stay the same because they're not finals, they only have one value. And now I get 77. That's what I call the alternate placement value. And now I'm going to write Purim in English. And again use the placement value 16, 21, 18, 9 and 13. Addition signs, right? And you'll find that 77 as well. So we've got Purim, the English word Purim, as we say it, or spell it in English, is the same as Purim in Hebrew, and lots, the meaning also equals to Purim. So, but that is based on the singular, because that's plural, Purim. The singular is Pur. I'm just going to change my colour, because I think the black's running out. So, Pur is the singular. Now, the word Pur, and this is a little bit more complicated, because it's just used a few different systems. Okay, Pur has a placement value of 43. That's 26 and 17 is 43. Okay, but it also has a normal value of 286. That's the normal value, and that's the placement value. Add them together, I get 329. Okay. Now, if I find the word, if I take the word lot singular, because that's Pur, it's a singular lot, and I find the normal inner value, I get 329. That's the NIV value. Why? Because L is 13, 30 is 100. O is 60, the normal value is 60, and 60 is 97. And T is 200, and 200 is 132, and you'll find that's 329. So we see a connection between lot and Pur in the singular as well. Okay. Yes, there's one more interesting one, which actually I'll put that down now, and we'll come back to it later. The word lot we're going to look at. We see that the word lot, if I take this here, we've got lot. Here we've got lot. If I find the placement value, that's 20 and 15 is 35 and 12 is 47. So that's lot, placement value. If I add that together, and I'm going to also add the normal value, which is, that's 200, 60, 30 is 290. So I'm going to add those three values now. I've got the normal inner value, the normal value, and the placement value. I get 16, 16 again, and 6. I get 666. Interesting number. I'm going to give a separate lecture on that number because I know it's of interest to Christians, and it is actually in the Bible in a few places, the Hebrew Bible in a few places as well, not just in the New Testament. So we'll see signals of that in another lecture coming up. But that number is lot. Now, now I have to extend the story a little bit because we want to see the significance of the number 13, because Haman drew the lots and he came out with the 13th of a duck. And you know that 13 is an unlucky number, or at least that's what some people say. So we're going to look at this number 13. First of all, let's write unlucky number. Unlucky number. Okay, how many letters? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 there, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 letters there, and this is not a Gematria, this is simply the number of letters, and an unlucky number is 13. Of course, if I want to know what a lucky number is, I have to take the 2 letters off, and I've got 11. Is 11 a lucky number? 11th of September, well, Twin Towers bombed up. There's quite a few dates of it. 11th, not sure what happened. Apollo 11, something about that. I can't remember them, but there's certainly a number of things that took place or assigned to the number 11 as being not such a good number. But I might do a lecture on just on number 11 sometime, because there are some interesting things in the Bible as well about number 11. So, okay, so we've got unlucky number 13. So number 13, I don't like the word 13. 13. Okay, 13 has a placement value of 99, and it has a normal value, that's where the T is 200, 8, 9, 90, 200, 5, 5, 5, and 50. I'll put that in, add signs in, there we are. And that will be 576, 7, no, did it wrong. 567, alright, 200, 400, 490, 540, 550, 559, 567, okay, add that together, that's the normal value. Now add that together, I get 666, so I've got lot connected to the number 13, okay, next time you buy a lottery ticket, choose the number 13. It might be lucky, might be not. Right, okay, so we have 13 to be connected to 666, and we've got lot connected to 666. So lot becomes connected to 13. Now, this destruction, so it is, let me just read you, oh, it's easy to read it from here, the quote in chapter 3. This is quoted from the book of Esther. The letters were sent by post to all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is Adar. So this was something which Hitler couldn't achieve. He couldn't do it on the first in one day. He didn't have all the Jewish peoples in his province. They all spread out in America, Russia, everywhere. So he had to conquer the countries first in order to destroy the Jews. If you know about the end of the war, they were still using trains to take Jews to Auschwitz from Hungary and various other places in order to decimate the Jewish people. Instead of using those trains to take needed ammunition and food supplies, etc., to the German soldiers on the front line. Such was the vehemence to the Jewish people. So this now we're going to take the words 13th of the 12th month. That is how it's written. Upon the 13th day of the 12th month. Okay? If we write down, we can take this off now. We're going to write down the 13th of the 12th excuse me, month. I'll let you work this one out. That's M-O-N. 12th month. If you work that out, you'll get 378 as a placement value. That's going through each of the placement values. The 13th of the 12th month. The destruction of the Jewish people equals 378. So we have a correlation there between the date in which Haman had chosen, the 13th of the 12th month, 378, and the destruction of the Jewish people, 378. It didn't happen. Okay, it didn't happen. But that was a possible event that could have happened. In fact, in my book, The Zion of Zion, where I talk about the Olympic Games a few years in England, in Stratford, that I give a possible day in which something pretty bad would have happened. Very difficult to speculate and try and find a day, because there's all different things that could happen according to measure of all sorts. There's probably an infant thing, a cup of tea will fall on the ground, right? But if you wanted to test it out, then you can try a few things and see if you can get a day. I thought I'd try it out because there was lots of negative things that and prophecies or whatever that would go. So I wanted to see if I could find a day, and I did find one day that gave an interesting possibility of a really bad event, and it didn't happen. Fine, but it was possibly a possible event. It was something that could arise, but it didn't. And they're saying this is a possible event that could have happened, destruction of the Jewish people, but it didn't happen. Why? Because there was effort put in by the Jewish people to return return to God and repent from their sins and fast, and that is what annuls decrees. On the Day of Atonement, the Jewish people pray that Hashem should, also on the Jewish New Year, we pray that giving charity and repentance and prayer will annul an evil decree sent upon us. And everybody in religions, they pray that obviously if somebody gets ill, they will pray for the person to get better, and prayer helps. It's not sealed in stone that a certain event will have to take place. It's often dependent upon what we do as a people to change the events. So nothing is, even according to your palmists might tell you that you would end a certain way, or astrologers might tell you that this would happen to you in the future. It's not sealed in stone, and all those things can change. Okay, let's move on. Okay, the number 127, which is what the word 13 equals. 13th. The word 13, not 13. 13 is 99. 13th is 127. And that's connected to the very beginning of the story of Esther, because it says that King Ahasuerus, King Ahasuerus, was the king over 127 provinces. And that in itself is also connected, pulled out in the Talmud in the tractate of Tanit, Fast, that Sarah, the wife of Abraham, lived for 127 years. I'm not going to go into that connection. We're going to look at this 13th is 127 placement value. So if we take 127, 127, and we work out the large value, we get 1,838. It's the large value of that number, 127. If we take the genocide of genocide of the Jewish people, we will get also 1,838 using large values as well, both large values. 127, genocide of the Jewish people. So, and then we've got an interesting connection when Esther says to Mordecai, her uncle, if I perish, I will perish. So we can find a connection there as well, because Esther, by the way, the word Esther in Hebrew, which is Aleph, Samuch, Taf, Resh, comes from the word Sater, which means to hide over. And that's, first of all, she hid her real name. Her real Hebrew name was actually Hadassah, and she was called Esther. So she concealed her people, because when she got married to King Ahasuerus, she was told by Mordecai, don't tell who you come from, don't tell your people. And so she hid that. And also because the whole story hides over God's name, that God is not revealed within the story, there's no mention of God in the story, yet we know he's working behind the scenes. So Esther in English is 75, placement value, and that equals the placement value of perish. And she says, if I perish, I will perish. So we see that as a possibility of her connection. She has to overcome that. She has to take the challenge of what is a possible destiny for her, and she takes it on board, and she goes to Ahasuerus and is saved. Just an interesting thing that Esther is connected to Mordecai. If you take Mordecai, and this is in Hebrew, Mordecai, this has a placement value of 58, and Mordecai has a placement value of 58. So they both have the same placement value. So we see a connection. If you read in my book Beyond Science, you will see, it's called Beyond Science, a mathematical proof that God exists. You will see there that where there are groups of scientists that work together to discover something, you see often their names are often linked together by some numbers. So it's like that they are attracted to each other, they sort of magnet together, that they come, we use a bit of physics, magnet, they come together because the Gematria, or one of the Gematrias, has a connection. So this is the case with Esther and Mordecai. They're together, and they are the star of the story, both of them, and they are both equal star. That's the placement value. 58 is star, 58 is star, so they're both a star of the story. Okay, now one more. I'm going to show you some very interesting connection to. All right, we'll give you part of the story. The story goes is that the 10 sons of Haman are also hung on the same gallows as Haman. So there's Haman at the very top and 10 sons underneath. And for that to happen, so Esther goes to the king again, and she says to the king, if it please the king, let it be granted the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also, according to this day's decrees, which was, that day was the 13th, to fight against their enemy. She wanted another day. And Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. So she wanted on the next day to continue fighting in Shushan, to grab the 10 sons of Haman which were in Shushan and get them hung. And the king permits her to go ahead, and they fight again, and that's exactly what happens. And in the Megillah, actual scroll of Esther, the 10 sons of Haman are written in a column, one under each other, and in those 10 sons there are 3 letters which are written smaller than all the others, and this is actually known by many Jews. They know this one, and if you're listening to this and you've seen this, keep listening, because I'm going to show you some interesting English Gematria connection to that. So first of all, she says Gam Macha, also tomorrow. Now what has been passed around amongst many Jewish people is the fact that during the Nuremberg Trials there were 11 Nazi generals or prominent people who were going to be hung. Göring took a pill, went to the toilet, took a pill, and he killed himself. So then in the end there were 10, and those 10 were hung. And that Nuremberg trials took place on October the 16th, right at short, 16th of October, in the year 1943, was it? 1946. 1946. Now that date was a date that was put off quite a few times, and it just came over the Jewish New Year. Now, if it had been an original date, it would have been a year earlier in the Jewish year. The fact that it took place on this day was right after Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and it was in the year 5707 in the Jewish year. So, and in the Hebrew date, it was the 21st of the Hebrew month of Tishri. So that was the first of Tishri is the New Year. First and second Tishri is the New Year, Rosh Hashanah in Hebrew. So it just enters on that day. Now these three letters, which are smaller, are the letters Tuf, Shin, and Zayin. And they have the normal value, that's 400, 300, and 7. So they have 707. And the normal way of writing the date is to write it without the number at the front, because that's obviously there for 1,000 years. So we don't normally write the Hebrew date. That would actually be the way that would write that Hebrew date. And if we wanted to write the 5, we'd use a capital Hey, not a capital Hey, a large Hey, and a little dash to signify that that was 5,000. But that's the normal way of writing the year. So that has an indication to a year. Now we say Gam Macha, also tomorrow. So these 10 sons of Haman are also going to be hung again years ahead, tomorrow, in the future. So just some interesting Gematria here is, okay, we have the word gum. Here's the word gum. It's not what you eat. It means also, okay? And we're going to use the alternative large values. Remember, mem, the alternative placement value of mem is 24, and 24 is 167. That's 3, and 3 is 56. So if I add those together, I will get 223. If I work out the placement value of 16th, I have to refer back here, 16th of October the 16th, actually. No, it's not. It is 16th of October. 16th of October, which is that date, and that equals, as a placement value, 213. So this is the alternative large value, equaling the placement value of 16th of October. So we've got a connection between Hebrew and the English date of that future event, Nuremberg Trials. Also connected to that is the word Macha, Gam Macha, also tomorrow. Now that has a placement value, there's no final letters here, so this is quite simple. Mem is 19, 99 is the 13th letter, 13 is 99, that's 8, which is 49, and that's 20, which is 107, and that gives you a value of 255. So Macha, Gam Macha together is 478 in the alternative large values. So Gam Macha, alternative values, large values is 478. If I now take the placement value of the, let's put the word the, 16th of October, 1946, I'm using the placement value, and I'll get the 16th of October, 1946 equals 478. That's that number down there. Gam Macha, also tomorrow. So another connection we see about the event of the Nuremberg Trials. Okay, that is all I'm going to give you on that story. If you're interested in this book, you can buy it through Amazon, or you can get it direct from me. I've got my email down below, and you'll have to use PayPal. I will be getting a website up soon. I'm still working on that. So, but at the moment, it's either through Amazon, or you can go direct to me If you do it direct to me, I can send you my catalogue, free catalogue of my books and CDs, and you can get discounts on buying multiple buys. And so if you're interested, do give me an email. Give me a like, share please my videos, and we'll see you for lecture 14 coming up soon. Bye bye.